Hi guys, welcome to yet another video of Microsoft ERP Beginners Tutorial Series. As you all know that in this particular tutorial series, we simplify all the complicated concepts in finance and operation in a very easy to understand way. Anybody with no background on finance and operation can get started with my course and they understand and they can even get started with an implementation projects. So I'm going to continue doing the same. In today's video, we are going to discuss about the vendor prepayment process in detail. There is a lot of confusion among the beginners between the prepayment and the vendor payment journal process. So I'm going to solve that confusion and we are going to go deeper from the scratch about the prepayment process. It's going to be a very interesting video. Before jumping into a video, I would also like to make a small announcement. I have recently launched a new website called as dynamics365lab.com. If you are a beginner or if you know somebody who is a beginner and wanted to get started with finance and operation, I would really request you to recommend my website or my course on finance and operation. It's available in www.dynamics365lab.com. The link is in the description. Please do recommend my new website and give support for my new website as well, just similar to how you support my YouTube channel. But you can still, of course, continue watching all my videos as usual, even in my YouTube channel. I will definitely be posting a lot of videos in the future, frequent interval. I'm not going to stop my YouTube journey. Of course, I will be continuing my YouTube journey. So with that note, let's get into the video. So hi guys, in this video, we're going to review the vendor prepayment process in Microsoft Dynamics 365. So it's a small topic, so I thought of squeeze in this topic here. So in this particular prepayment scenario, I'm actually created a new vendor, which is of parts supplier new. This is my new vendor I just created. And I'm going to firstly, let's say, create a invoice journal for this particular vendor. So what happens is when you are creating a vendor invoice, you are going to use the vendor name and you are going to credit the vendor and then offset it to, let's say in this case, I'm offsetting it to an expense account. So now let us post this particular vendor. So it's going to increase the vendor balance, right? So let us quickly post it and then go back to that particular vendor, refresh it, check the vendor balance. You will see that the vendor balance, since it's a new vendor, is right now credited with $1,000, right? So this is my vendor balance right now. And if I also see the transactions and within the transactions, if I review the voucher, you will see that the vendor balance got posted to the, even though I used a subledger in the general journal, but in general, in reality, it got posted to this particular account, which is our summary account, and it got credited to our transportation charges expense account, right? So this is because of the concept of vendor posting profile that we discussed earlier, right? So which means that in the vendor payments, there is a section, sorry, in the accounts payable, there is a section called as posting vendor posting profile. So within this particular vendor posting profile, let me just delete this for now. We have just, let's say, one posting profile, and this is a posting profile with the name general, and this particular posting profile is having a summary account, and this particular summary account is used here, right? So let's say that in this particular case, whenever I'm parking my vendor invoice, it's getting parked to the summary account, and in this case, summary account is a liability account, so it's getting posted to the liability account. Whereas in a case of a vendor prepayment, it is an asset to us, right? It is not something we owe to the vendor, whereas we paid it upfront to the vendor, which is a kind of an asset to us. And I cannot park those vendor prepayment to this particular account, because if I do so, then it actually becomes a vendor's liability, right? So in such cases, I might need to have another account to park all those vendor prepayment. But that particular account, the another account, I cannot, tag that account here. Let's say that even at the group level, I can have vendor accounts, but I cannot tag two accounts for a group. Or in a case of, in this scenario where I have, for all, I have this summary account, right? So in this particular case, let me add again, sorry. I cannot even like say all, and let's say that I'm tagging another account, let's say asset account. I cannot do that because if I save it, the system is not going to let me do that, right? So it is not possible to share the same posting profile and then tag both the asset account and the liability account. So to overcome this challenge where we need an additional asset account to park all of that related with the prepayments, we can instead create another posting profile, as we cannot obviously add in within the same posting profile. Let's say prepayment um, supplier prepayment, let's say for example. And here I am going to say all, I mean, normally we have groups, but in this case, I'm going to say all. And let me just quickly create an asset account, which is going to be this supplier prepayment. So that's the last account I have in the system. Okay. So just type vendor prepayments, and that's going to be an asset. So let me just copy that account, go back and use it here. That's all. So we have two posting profiles now, one for parking the liability and one for parking the prepayments, which is going to be the asset for the company. So now another step that we need to remember doing is go to the accounts payable module and get into the ledger and sales tax, and you already mapped the posting profile. Remember, this is for posting the summary account, meaning the vendor balance, and likewise we have a separate area here which is going to hold all the posting profile for the payment journal with prepayments, as you can see here. Okay, so that's the one. So if I now go back to my original transactions of vendor, so let's say this is the vendor that I am talking about, right? So if I check the vendor balance, oh, the vendor balance is still 1000. Let me make this vendor balance 0 so we understand from the scratch. So in order to make the vendor balance 0, obviously I need to post a payment journal for the vendor, meaning I need to make a payment to the vendor, for which let me go and use a vendor payment journal. Say okay. So this is the payment that I'm making. So let's use this journal name, and then let us get into that's the vendor. System is a bit slow today. So that's the vendor. Once you select the vendor, you go ahead and post the debit to the vendor, or yeah, post a debit to the vendor, or you can just also, this process, we've already gone through this process before, which is selecting the vendor and refresh the screen, and you will see there is a settlement So mark the settlements. That way it will automatically bring in the amount into the system, and it will link the payment to the original invoice. And I'm going to make the payment, let's say from the bank. Okay, that's all. Let me post it. So this way we are going to now debit the summary account, which is the account from the original posting profile. What is this issue all about? Ta, ta, ta. Reporting currency. Okay. Let me try to use another account. There's some problem with the currencies. So for time being, to go through our scenario, let me use some expense here. And yes, okay. Let me post it. Okay, it's completed. So if I now check my vendor, let me check my vendor's balance. The errors that we received earlier was related with the accounting reporting currency, because we did some foreign currency scenarios before, so it messed the data. I might need to run the foreign currency revaluation and try that and sort that issue. So I just rather, in order for us to go through the scenario, I just changed the offset account to another account so I can go through with you with our actual scenario of the day. So right now I am trying to get into my vendor. And that's the vendor, and if I check the vendor balance, I'll see there is no vendor balance. And also if I try to check the transactions, you will have a credit and debit, both are getting posted to the summary account. Okay, because if you see the voucher, the voucher is pointing to the summary account, which is our actual posting profiles account, right? So so now that the vendor is gone, the balance is zero impact. Now let's go to the how do we handle the prepayments, right? That's the actual topic. So again, for the prepayments, let's say that we have made some payments to the vendor upfront as a prepayment. Again, we are going to use the same vendor payment journal. So let us go there. And I don't want to use the same journal name because I want to differentiate both of these scenarios with the different journal names. So let me go there and just say prepayment. Okay. And again, the journal name needs to be the same, which is the name that we have given for let me show you first. So this one, if I go to the, oh God, better I delete it, do it again. So if I go for the vendor payment journal, vendor disbursement, right? We already created this journal in earlier sessions.
So this is the same journal type that I need to keep it for the vendor prepayment also. Like I can even use the previous journal name, but still to just differentiate it, I wanted to use a new journal name as a best practice. Okay, so that's all. And we need to maybe create a new voucher series, so I know when the voucher number created, when I get into the voucher transaction, I know that this particular voucher number belongs to prepayment and this particular voucher number belongs to the payment. It will help me differentiate while going through the vouchers. So it's important that you have a proper voucher series with a proper prefix of prepayment. That way you can differentiate the voucher transactions better. But in this case, to save some time, I'm just going to use an existing voucher number. So I have I have created a journal name. So let me go back to the payment journal and choose the proper prepayment journal name, and then get into the lines and try to select the vendor. That's the vendor. Okay, so let's say that we are going to make a prepayment to this vendor, which is like a debit, right? So of 50, no, maybe 5,000. Okay, and let me choose a bank account as an offset here. Okay, so yeah, so that's done. In this particular example, we are posting a debit to the vendor, but in this case we are not posting the debit to the summary account of vendor, because that way it is going to post it to the liability account, whereas in our case we have created a new account, if you remember, which is for the prepayment within another posting profile. So right now it is mapped to the general posting profile that we already have in the system, but we may need to change the posting profile to a prepayment posting profile that we have just created during the beginning of this video. I don't need to manually change it, just turn on this tab, this switch. So it says prepayment journal voucher. It will automatically change to the prepayment journals posting profile. So which means that now the vendor's debit is not going to be posted to the summary account, which is a liability account, but it's going to be debited to the proper asset account. Okay, so that is done. So now let us post this prepayment. We are done with it. Let's post this prepayment. Okay, the prepayment is posted. So if I now go to the vendor and check the balance, you will have a vendor balance which is in positive instead of negative, which means that it is debited to the vendor balance actually, right? So you will within this particular transaction, this if you also check the voucher, you will see that this actually getting posted to the asset account, and even though it is getting posted to the asset account, you will still see that the vendor balance is increased, because this is right now parked with the prepayment account and it is credited from a bank account. So you will also see that is the transaction here within the vendor. So now we posted the prepayment successfully. So now let us now go ahead and invoice the customer and try to consume this prepayment and see what happens. So now let's say that I need to now let's say that I received an invoice from the customer, which is the recent invoice, which is for, let's say, $50,000. But remember, I already made a prepayment to the vendor. So which means that I received an invoice from the vendor just now. In the email, I'm going to register that invoice. But if you remember, I already made a prepayment of 5,000 to the vendor, so I only owe 45,000 to the vendor in this case, not the 50,000, because I already made a 5,000 prepayment, right? So how do we handle it now? So let's say that when I'm going to create an invoice to the customer, the invoice needs to be not booked for 45, but it needs to be originally booked for $50,000 because that's the original invoice amount, right? I cannot adjust my invoice amount to match with the prepayment. All will happen automatically in the system, right? So, so that's the invoice. Let me get into the lines and let me choose the vendor. I'm trying to invoice this vendor. Uh, so as soon as you choose the vendor, you will see that the settle transaction link is enabled. So get into that and you will see that there is this prepayment transaction that is available against the vendor. So go ahead and check it and mark selected. So it will say that the transaction is a prepayment. Say yes and say okay. So that way the prepayment is actually linked with the invoice line. So original invoice is not 5,000. It is like it's coming from the prepayment, but the originally that we owe to the vendor is a invoice that we received is for 50,000. So I might need to adjust that here manually. So because the original invoice is 50,000. So once I adjust it and I'll see that if I refresh everywhere, you will see that the 50,000 is updated everywhere, right? And I will be invoicing to the another expense account. Let's say it is some expense, um some kind of travel expense, let's say for example. So now let us post this, and if I also remember that here um, we it is let me first post it and show you first. Okay, okay, sorry, the invoice number needs to be, let us post it. Okay, fine. So now this is posted invoice, right? If I now try to get into the voucher, you will see no difference. You will see that the invoice got posted to the actual supplier payable account, which is basically our summary account, whereas it got debited from the expense account. So invoice level, it looks very, very usual and normal, right? But if I get into the vendor's balance, right, if I refresh it, you will see that the vendor balance, it's not updated. Let me go back and come in. If you see the vendor balance is still is 45,000, not 50,000, because it is considering your debit of 5,000 into picture. So it is basically the minus 45,000 is what I owe to the customer, sorry, the vendor. So if I also go to the transactions, check the transactions, you will clearly see that the 50,000 basically it's creating only the 45,000 balance. Okay, and you will also see that there is a debit posted for the 5,000. You'll also see that the recent voucher which got posted for the prepayment is basically also getting out of the asset account, meaning it is getting credited from the asset account and also got into the actual supplier payable account. Okay, so the system does all these transactions and make sure that the balances match properly, and you will still see the vendor balance to be 45,000 and not 50,000. So this is how you manage the prepayment process, guys. So basically it is a payment journal, but just that you need to enable the prepayment flag in the payment journal and make sure you have another posting profile in and tag the posting profile in the accounts payable parameter as a prepayment journal parameter. So that's all for this video. See you again in another video.